What's up, everyone? This is Grayson the Dean 221 Nichols, and again, here we are on the Elite Rounders YouTube channel, going over the newest episode of Poker After Dark. We're hot off the heels of a crazy episode of High Stakes Poker last week, so if you haven't watched that one yet, go back and check that out. We saw maybe the biggest fold in poker history by Doug Polk up against yours truly, Phil Hellmuth, my maybe my least favorite player, actually, to be quite honest. Sorry, Phil. So that was pretty cool to watch that. Go back and check that out on our channel. Today we're looking at the newest episode of Poker After Dark, and we got a new lineup, and they call it the coach's game, essentially. So yeah, there's not going to be a ton of bad play. We're going to assume these guys all really play well. So yeah, let's just jump right into this. Our lineup, a few of the guys you recognize from past episodes: James Romero, tough online and live player; John Little, professional coach; Matt Affleck, also a coach and a player. Yeah, Brad Owen, well-known vlogger, love his material, definitely check it out. Faraz Jaka, awesome tournament player, battled against him for years, really nice guy, met him out in Vegas. And then Justin Saliba, no idea who that is, but yeah, he was splashing around as well. So this hand's pretty cool. We're not going to get to make fun of Phil Hellmuth today or anything, unfortunately. Check us out Thursday morning. Hopefully there'll be a crazy episode of High Stakes Poker to go over with him again. But we got some interesting stuff here. Like I said, these guys all play really well, and I'd say the most interesting hand of the night to me was a hand between James and Faraz. Two of the big stacks at the moment, and this was a 5K buy-in sit and go for what it's worth. They were two of the big stacks at the moment, and again, two tough players, and they battled out this really interesting hand. And, the title might give away a little bit of what happened here, but what I wanted to discuss with you guys today is the idea of when to turn a legitimate hand into a bluff, and the idea of merging your ranges together, right? So I thought this was a cool hand. Let's just jump right in. Blinds are 12, 1250, 2500. And Justin Saliba starts off the action by opening with Ace X suited off of 24 blinds or so, which seems fine. James flats with nines, also seems standard. And Brad flats with a suited king in the small blind. And then Faraz squeezes to 30,000 with pocket jacks in the big blind. Everything looks pretty good and standard here. Justin, of course, folds. James, of course, calls. And Brad also, of course, folds. So we go to the flop two ways between Faraz and James. The flop is pretty solid for both of them. 10 high gives Faraz an overpair. He must feel really good since James almost certainly never has, queens or better here. This seems like a good board for James, knowing that Faraz will c-bet his entire range on this board, and nines figures to be good most of the time, unless Faraz happened to have something like, again, jacks plus, right? So definitely a standard 25K bet from Faraz and a standard call from James. Turn is another blank, and I think you're going to see another standard bet from Faraz, upping it to about 50K here. And this is a tough spot for James. Like, James could actually consider folding here, based on the fact that if he folds, he's still a dominant second place in this sit and go against these other tough players, right? However, if he calls and is able to win this hand, he is going to have a really, really big chip lead that will be tough for the other guys to overcome. So this is quite the inflection point. I believe if he calls here and the river is a brick, it's going to be hard to get away. I think it would be reasonable to consider folding here, but I also think that James knows that, Faraz could double barrel here with things like ace-king, ace-queen that picked up a gut shot, overs with spades, like queen-jack spades, king-jack spades, ace-x of spades. He would probably barrel all of these again here. So James goes ahead and makes the call. Again, makes sense. I can see you going either way here, but probably leaning more towards call. And this is where it gets really weird. So the river is the three of diamonds, okay? And Faraz has 100K left, and he's about half pot left. This is a tough spot for Faraz. I mean, all-in doesn't really make any sense at all. You never get called by worse. Like, James is not going to call with king 10, queen 10, jack 10, 9 10. So an all-in doesn't make sense. So that means you have to decide between check calling or check folding. This is tough, I mean, there are some aces that James could have in his range. Ace 10, again, ace X of spades. So there are hands he can represent there, right? This is tough for me. Again, I don't know if I'd be comfortable check folding this river. And Faraz doesn't have enough to bet fold either. He can't bet 50, 60K and then fold. So Unfortunately, this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't spot. I think this is impossible for Faraz. Check call seems rough. The check fold also seems rough, you know? Um, the really interesting question is, Faraz does decide to check, probably hoping that James just checks back, knowing he most likely will be folding to a bet because he can't stand up to the pressure. This is where it's interesting for James. Once he checks to James, now James starts to think, okay, do I need to turn my hand into a bluff? If so, A, what are we repping? B, what are we trying to make Faraz fold, right? Those are the two keys when you are bluffing. Again, A, what are you repping? B, what are you attempting to make your opponent fold? When those two things are aligned, you're going to make successful bluffs, right? So James immediately, let's see, what can he represent? Well, he can have ace 10. He could have something like ace x of spades. He could have maybe gotten really stubborn with like an ace 5 of clubs that called on the flop and then called one on the turn. He doesn't rep a ton of aces. It's going to look a lot like probably ace x of spades, to be honest, or ace 10. That's kind of it. However, the part that really intrigues me is the stuff that he might make Faraz fold, right? So if Faraz had Jack Jack, Queen Queen, King King, all of which make a lot of sense for him in this spot, he would now have to fold these if James was to turn his nines into a bluff, right? And I also think it's a sweet spot too because I don't think that Faraz would ever, this isn't a spot where James would get value with worse, like Faraz is never calling with like sevens or eights, right? However, I do think he has to fold jacks, queens, kings if James shoves here. And I do think that's a fair chunk of Faraz's range. Now, the question is, what would Faraz do with aces here, right? It would be kind of a cagey check, so I could dig that. I could see that happening for sure. But I think it's going to be a little bit more of the check fold with Jack, Jack, Queen, Queen, King, King. And I believe James saw that too and saw a really sneaky opportunity to turn his hand that he was calling down for value on the flop and turn, on pre-flop, flop, and turn, and now turn it into a bluff, right? And sure enough, James goes ahead and jams. James goes ahead and jams. There we go. And Faraz folds. So James turns his nines into a bluff and wins a huge pot of over $250,000 to take a substantial lead in this six-handed coach's sit and go. Really cool hand. If you guys have any hands that you've seen recently where someone turned a pair, like a middle pair, or even if you find bonus points, if you find one where someone turns top pair into a bluff, I would love to see it. Post it in the comments. These are really cool hands. These are some of the more complex hands we get into as poker players. You don't see it that often, and this is something I talk to students about as well. Things like, yes, there's a chance your opponent could be turning so-and-so into a bluff here. However, it doesn't happen a lot. But when you're dealing with an elite player versus another elite player, it's part of the game, So awesome hand by James. Tough spot for Faraz. Can't blame him for taking the line he took. And again, really savvy spot by James to take a hand that you were playing as a value hand on the early streets and then moving it into your bluff range. And the reason he's able to do this is because he has such a good pulse on what Faraz's range looks like and what Faraz ranges him on, right? So, again, focus on your opponent's range. It will help open doors for you and help you just come up with plays that are a bit outside of the box, and it will make you different and ahead of the curve from everyone else. And that is what we were looking for to get good at this game, guys. Hope you all enjoyed this. Check out the video for the high stakes poker video. It's going to be on Thursday mornings with some Phil Hellmuth talk. So make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you all on Thursday. Good luck on the felt this week, guys. See y'all soon.